The National Enquirer, not just for your supermarket checkout line anymore. John Edwards can tell you why. The Oklahoma County Jail, still good for finger pointing after all these years. And the Oklahoma Speaker of the House says no more correction studies. What does that mean? And the poll shows that Americans just might be growing tired of all the global warming hype. And who's our early favorite for political comeback players of the year? Communists. Yes, the communists are back, and we go unscripted on our friends from the Cold War right now on News 9's Your Vote Counts. Yeah. Great names in journalism, Washington Post, New York Times, National Enquirer. They nailed John Edwards after he lied for 2 weeks saying this wasn't true. I guess his career is over. We feel sorry for him. He's not speaking in Denver, but Bill Clinton is. I mean, is this a Democrat problem?
No, it's not a Democratic problem. As we've seen in years past with Newt Gingrich, his wife is dying of cancer. He goes to the hospital, tells her he's getting a divorce, and he marries the secretary who he divorces. And, you know, the party of family values. Please, let's cut it out. Never mind Bob Livingston and Mark Foley. John Edwards let us down. Let the Democratic Party down. Let the country down. This guy wasn't being honest from the beginning. And also, you know, I had problems too with John Edwards. The $600 haircut, talking about the poor and all that, and he made millions off of the gynecologist. I mean, to be a lawyer, that's one thing, but, you know, he was almost speaking out of forked tongue. Thank God he wasn't the nominee, because I think if this story hadn't broken, he might have really challenged for the top spot. But all of us in public life need to remember these stories. We are supposed to hold our behavior, our character high. These guys let us down, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. I'm not sorry that he's not speaking at the convention. Bill Clinton's a past president, by the way.
Well, and so Edwards, the woman had a baby. We still don't know who the daddy is on that. If he'd have been the nominee, it'd been a disaster for Democrats.
Well, if he had been the nominee, obviously Republicans would be sitting in very good shape with regard to the general election. I think the more important question for the Democrats is had this story broken earlier. You said he'd been lying for 2 weeks. Heck, he's been lying about this for a longer period of time than that. It obviously would have changed the dynamics of the primary, and perhaps Hillary Clinton would have emerged as the Democrat nominee for the presidential election. But listen, this whole conduct is just morally reprehensible. It's bad. It's really sad. And the person that I feel badly for is Elizabeth Edwards, who obviously is terminal from cancer. She obviously has chosen to forgive him, but gosh, this is a morally reprehensible act that should be condemned.
Yeah, that's what she says in public. I'll tell you what, I'll bet you sleeping on the couch. We're going to see some of that good old time figure point now about this Oklahoma County jail. We talked a little bit about it last week, but now we're starting to see stories about the beginning of the jail, how it was done, how the architecture involved, the people who built this thing. Back then, it was like this. Everybody's pointing the fingers. You know, corrections is a big issue. We're about to talk about that. But this county jail thing, we're going to see some spin in the next month or so as we get to what are we going to do about this county jail. Richard says we're going to have a bond issue.
Well, I hope not. And I suspect that the voters in Oklahoma County who voted not too long ago to build that jail would probably be very reluctant about a bond issue to build an entirely new jail. There is no doubt that there has been some problems down there, significant ones. Obviously, you've had allegations of abuse and neglect of prisoners who aren't entitled to the best of treatment, but not to those bad circumstances either. And also, you've had allegations of mismanagement. And certainly, it's now a decade and a half later that we're talking about the jail still. So obviously, there are some long-term management issues down there. No doubt about it. Scott, my bigger concern here is that all this may very well be a ruse to try to replace the jail, for all I know. And I can tell you that this happens in other areas. We've got health department inspectors who are looking at the jail in Cleveland County and a number of other counties around the state of Oklahoma, and they're trying to use that as a wedge issue to get voters to approve these new jails. Listen, these things shouldn't be luxury hotels or places where people go to be punished.
Yeah, but at some point, the jail, if it was state-of-the-art 20 years ago, 25 years ago, it wouldn't be today. I mean, at what point do we stop talking about how things being built and deal with the issues at hand? Because we've got infrastructure problems all over the state.
That's exactly right. This jail is not perfect, but I believe in Oklahoma County, I represent a district in Oklahoma County, we need to do a better job of maintaining and managing that jail. The taxpayers in Oklahoma have been stung recently in the last year. We bought the GM plan, which I was against. We had a sales tax extension for basketball teams, and now the county commissioners are going to approve. One's a Democrat, one's a Republican, there's a third one that's up for election. Let's cut it out. Let's run this jail better, because you're absolutely right, Scott. We have other infrastructure problems in the state. I agree with everything Randy Carroll just said. which is unusual on this show.
And that kind of commissioner race, we'll take a look at it next week. It got really nasty this week, and you wonder if the jail would have something to do with that. Let's stay with corrections for just a minute. You've been very critical of corrections. The speaker this week said, we're not going to have any more studies. We have enough studies to do something about it. The question is, what are we going to do about our prisons that are bursting at the seams? And we always hear we need more money. We need to help people who have mental health issues. How are we going to get our fingers around, our arms around this issue?
So the first answer to that question is, Scott and Randy, is that we as legislators, Representative Carol and I, you and I and the rest of the body, the Senate and the House and the Governor, have got to begin to have some political courage to deal with the real issue of people being locked up. It costs $26,000 a year to lock up a prisoner inside the walls. Now, prisons are for bad people, lawbreakers, where they belong. But Oklahoma is number 3 in the nation in locking males up, number 1 in the nation in locking females up. If you look at our crime rates, we're not the 3rd lowest crime rate state in the nation, but we have the highest 3rd in the nation, the highest percentage. Private prisons are absolutely the wrong idea. People making a profit. This was Governor Frank Keating's baby. This was an inside deal from the very beginning. Corporations, Corrections of America, and the rest of the gang, they have contracts. When they don't get their money, they come to the state and want more. Let's stop building private prisons. Let's start thinking about alternative sentencing. Let's have sentencing guidelines like we do in federal court. When somebody does 3 years in federal court, they do 3 years in federal court. Unlike in Oklahoma, you get a 10-year sentence and you do 18 months. We gotta look at this wisely.
He doesn't like private prisons. What do you think about that?
Well, I think private prisons are okay. I think they're part of the solution, particularly with regard to overflow capacity. It certainly is an alternative to the state and the taxpayers eating the expense of building and staffing a brand new facility, although certainly we need to take a look at some of that as well. Listen, anytime you hear Democrats talking about being smart on crime, it means one thing. We want to let them out early, and we want to come up with an excuse to do that. Public safety is a core function of state government. Certainly it needs to be a priority. For goodness sakes, we don't want to let these people out. More studies? No, we need more action. We paid $1 million for a performance
public.
audit.
Oh, don't let them out.
Scott, we paid $1 million for a performance audit. We don't need more talk. We don't need more rhetoric. We don't need more study. We need to act on the recommendations of
the $1 million we spent. We haven't done anything about it. Let's do something in that study.
I agree.
Okay. While we're talking about corrections, let's move to an issue in terms of talking about scaring people. Have you seen the forecast for the next few days?
It's kind of goofy, isn't it?
It's kind of goofy. Chicago, I saw a situation here in the newsroom the other day, or today, where the highest temperature in Chicago this summer has been 91 degrees. Okay, so there are some indications, a lot of polling out, at least one big national poll this week, saying people are kind of backing off this global warming hysteria. Do you sense that that sanity is starting to creep back into the discussion of global warming? Or is it just a temporary respite because of the weather?
Well, I mean, listen, I think obviously that this global warming issue has been hyped for quite some time. Obviously, the principal person who has been taking this issue on at the federal level has been Senator Inhofe. And listen, I don't think even among some conservatives, they will acknowledge that there's been some warming. I think the question is on degree and causation. In other words, has the warming been significant? Is there any evidence that this is attributable to human activity at all? And obviously, it's on that latter part that there is a serious lack of scientific consensus. And I think that's the reason you're starting to see a number of people, and thankfully it's beginning to trickle down generally to public opinion, that are backing off of that position. And listen, Scott, here's the funny thing, is that some of these folks who are the primary global warming proponents are the same folks who, when Earth Day came around back in the early 1970s, were out there holding up signs that the next ice age is coming, for goodness sakes. And now they're obviously on the other side of the issue. This issue is hype. I'm glad people are backing off of it.
Well, and you just talked about corrections, scaring people. But, if you're talking about global warming, you can scare people into driving cars that get you killed and putting on sweaters and turn down your thermostats and doing silly things. Do you think that we're going to get an equilibrium in terms of science versus rational activity based upon climate change in this country? Ever?
Well, I actually believe that the vast majority of credible scientists, unlike Senator Inhofe, who I think still was part of the Flat Earth Society, back when, the Earth was flat. The ice caps are melting. You can't disagree with that. 80% of that ABC poll you just said that global warming is a real threat. The Republicans are in tight with big oil, big companies, carbon-ingested fuel engines. They don't want to change because they know their profit lines are at stake here. Big money helps Republicans. They don't want to see anything to do about it because the days of the gasoline-fired internal engine are coming to an end.
Well, they're melting on Mars, too.
Speaking of fear-mongering, there we go.
Now, how about the truth? That truth is the truth. Thank you.
Okay, well, we're never going to work that one out, but we will talk about, hey, the political player comeback of the week. Communists.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, we're going to talk about
President Lane Bush laying down for Putin. Well, unbelievable.